The chamber was silent except for the low hum of failing power cells and the soft crackle of sparks jumping across broken wires. The emergency lights flickered overhead like dying stars, throwing long shadows across the ruined laboratory. Dust hung thick in the air, carrying the sharp smell of burnt metal and shattered glass. Every wall seemed wounded, every machine half destroyed, as if the entire place had taken one final breath and collapsed under its own secrets. In the far corner of the chamber, a small girl sat curled against a metal support beam. Her skin, faintly silver and smooth as polished stone, reflected the red emergency light in trembling patches. She hugged her knees tightly to her chest, hiding her face as if the darkness itself were safer than being seen. Her thin hair, white, fine, almost glowing, fell over her eyes like a curtain that hid her fear from the world. She didn't dare move. Even breathing felt dangerous. The last time the alarms had sounded, she had been dragged through a hallway by lab workers who spoke in cold, flat tones. She remembered their voices more than their faces, always talking about measurements, output levels, combat reflexes. Never a single word of comfort, never anything gentle. She had lived her entire short life inside this metal cage of experiments, where every day was only another test, another command, another reminder that her life belonged to someone else. Now the alarms were silent, replaced by the slow crackle of fire, and she sat alone, unsure if loneliness was better or worse. A sudden crash echoed through the chamber as the heavy blast door shuttered. The girl flinched violently, pressing herself deeper into the corner. Footsteps, many of them, approached from the other side. She could hear voices, low and hurried, but she couldn't understand the words. Her heart thumped painfully against her ribs. Every instinct screamed the same message: they're coming for you. A bright spark fell from the ceiling and landed near her feet. She didn't look at it. Her gaze remained fixed on the door as it groaned again under pressure. She thought about running. She thought about hiding under one of the broken tables. But where would she go? There were no safe corners here. There never had been. With a grinding metallic shriek, the blast door finally tore open. Smoke rolled into the chamber, and through it stepped a group of humans wearing protective suits and helmets with glowing visors. They held weapons, but they did not point them. Their movements were steady, cautious, almost respectful, nothing like the cold efficiency she had grown used to. The humans scanned the room until one of them spotted her crouched in the corner. The figure lifted a hand, signaling the others to hold back. Then he removed his helmet, letting fresh air carry away the mist from the filtered mask. His hair was dark and messy, damp with sweat. His eyes were gentle in a way she had never seen before, warm, tired, but full of something she didn't recognize. Hope, maybe, or sorrow. He stepped toward her slowly, as if approaching a frightened animal. His name tag was simple, just one word. Mason. The girl tensed even more, pressing her back so hard against the wall that the metal groaned. Her voice, rarely used and shaky from fear, slipped out in a thin whisper. Are you going to take me away? She expected the worst. She expected chains, commands, punishment. That was what being taken away always meant here. Being dragged through corridors, placed into bright rooms with cold tables, strapped down while strangers spoke as if she could not hear them. For a moment, Mason said nothing. He only knelt down so their eyes were level, keeping his hands visible and empty. There was no anger in his face, no disgust. Only a deep sadness, as if he already knew what she had endured. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm and warm, so soft that it made her blink in confusion. No, he said gently, I'm not here to take you away. She froze, unsure if she had heard correctly. Mason continued, his tone turning even softer. I'm here to take you out of this place. Away from everything that hurt you, somewhere safe, somewhere new, somewhere that belongs to you. The girl stared at him wide-eyed, her breath caught in her throat. His words didn't sound like commands. They sounded like a promise. A promise she had never dared to dream of. Mason did not move closer. He stayed exactly where he was, crouched on one knee, giving the girl space to breathe. The rest of the rescue team spread out around the chamber, checking the corners, scanning for dangers, but none of them looked at her the way the scientists used to. Their eyes held caution, yes, but also sympathy, something she had never learned to understand. The girl's hands shook against her knees. She tried to look brave, but her voice quivered when she whispered, I don't understand. Humans, they only come to command me. Mason shook his head gently. Not today. She blinked, confused. The words sounded simple, but they felt heavy with meaning. Humans never said things she understood. They usually talked over her head, filling the room with complicated plans, test results, or angry orders. But this man spoke in a voice she could follow, slow and kind, as if he wanted her to hear him, not fear him. Mason reached to his belt and slowly pulled out a small ration bar. He didn't toss it at her or force it into her hands. Instead, he placed it on the floor halfway between them, letting the gesture speak for him. "It's yours if you want it," he said. The girl stared at the bar as if it were a dangerous object. In the lab, food had always come in metal bowls slid across the floor. Bitter liquid, cold chunks, tasteless paste. Nothing ever smelled warm or comforting. She had eaten because they told her to, never because she wanted to. "Why give me this?" she whispered. "You look hungry," Mason replied. Hungry, she didn't even know what hunger truly felt like. She only knew the strange emptiness inside her chest, a mix of fear and loneliness that had never left her. But this emptiness felt different. Was it her stomach, or something deeper? She reached out slowly, her fingers trembling, and picked up the ration bar. Mason watched quietly, his expression calm and patient. When she took the first small bite, her eyes widened. The taste was soft, sweet, nothing like the chemical-flavored meals she knew. It was almost comforting. She swallowed hard. "Why help me?" she asked again, this time louder, her tone filled with aching confusion. Mason drew in a slow breath, as if considering how to speak without hurting her. "Because someone should have helped you a long time ago," he said. "What they did to you was wrong." The girl stiffened. Wrong? The scientists had never used that word. They only spoke of efficiency, success rates, performance levels. She had always been a project, never a person. "They said I was made for war," she murmured, lowering her gaze to the cracked floor. "They said I must obey. They said I belonged to them." Mason's jaw tightened, not with anger at her, but at the people who had created her suffering. His voice, though calm, carried a firm strength. "They lied to you," he said. "You don't belong to anyone." The girl looked up sharply, almost startled by the idea. Not belong? The concept felt impossible, like imagining wings when she had never flown. Mason placed his hand on the floor beside him, palm open, showing he held no weapon and no intention to grab her. "You can come with us," he said softly. "Only if you choose to, we won't force you." Choose, that word echoed painfully through her mind. She had never been allowed to choose anything, not what to eat, not where to sleep, not even what to feel. The scientists had told her emotions were distractions. But right now, she felt something powerful rising inside her, hope tangled with fear. Her eyes drifted toward the hallway beyond the broken door. The other humans waited, watching her with cautious kindness. None of them looked ready to drag her away. None carried chains or needles. Their postures were open, their weapons lowered but ready, not for her, but for threats she did not yet understand. "What happens if I go with you?" she asked quietly. Mason's expression warmed, like sunlight glowing behind storm clouds. "Then we take you out of here," he answered. "We take you someplace where nobody will hurt you again." She hesitated, her breathing uneven. "And if I don't go?" "Then we leave the decision to you," Mason replied gently. "We won't imprison you. We won't force you to return here. You decide your future." Her heart pounded. She had a future. The idea was almost painful in its brightness. Mason slowly extended a hand, not demanding, only offering. "You're safe now," he said softly. "You get to choose what happens next." For a long moment she stared at his hand. Her own fingers twitched with uncertainty. The world felt too big, too heavy, too strange. But Mason didn't rush her. He didn't speak again, he simply waited. And she realized with a trembling breath that this was the first time in her life someone had ever waited for her. The girl followed Mason through the dim hallway, her steps small and unsteady. She walked as if each movement needed permission from the ground itself. Every flicker of light made her flinch. Every echoing footstep made her glance behind. Mason stayed a few paces ahead of her, close enough to protect her, far enough not to frighten her. His presence felt solid, like a warm lamp in a cold room. The rescue team quietly scanned the broken corridors. Their boots crunched over shattered glass, metal plates, and abandoned tools. The air smelled like smoke and old fear, thick enough to cling to their clothes. The girl tried not to breathe too deeply. Every smell reminded her of memories she wished she could erase. They entered a small side room where half of the ceiling had collapsed. Sparks danced along the floor where wires lay exposed. Mason motioned for the team to rest for a moment. Then he sat beside a fallen console and gently set his backpack on the ground. The girl hovered near the doorway, unsure if she was allowed to enter. Her hands twisted nervously. She didn't want to get too close. She didn't want to make a mistake. Mason looked up at her with a small, tired smile. "You can sit if you want," he said softly. She nodded but stayed where she was. Mason did not insist. After a quiet moment, she finally stepped inside. The room felt strangely calm compared to the loud alarms she'd lived with all her life. Dust floated like tiny stars in the air, catching the faint glow of emergency lights. Her footsteps were almost soundless as she came closer. Mason rummaged through his pack and pulled out a small thermal flask. "It's warm water," he explained. "Helps calm the nerves." He unscrewed the cap, letting a thin stream of steam rise gently into the cold air. The girl stared at it, mesmerized. She had never seen water warm before. They had always given her cold, metal-tasting liquid through tubes. She approached slowly and took the flask with both hands. The heat surprised her. It felt alive. She held it to her chest like a fragile treasure. Mason watched her quietly. "May I ask your name?" he said. She looked down, ashamed. "They didn't give me one," she murmured. "They called me Prototype 7, sometimes just 7. Mason's shoulders tensed, not in anger toward her, but toward the people who created her. "That's not a name," he said softly. "That's a label." She touched her chest with her free hand, as if searching for something hidden beneath her skin. "I don't know how to be anything else." "That's not your fault," Mason told her. Her throat tightened. No one had ever told her something wasn't her fault. She swallowed carefully, as if the words themselves were too large to accept. After a long pause, she finally whispered, "They said I was made to fight for them, to do things humans didn't want to do. They said pain makes me stronger." Mason took in a sharp breath, his expression darkening. Pain shouldn't be anyone's teacher. Her eyes glimmered like wet metal. She wasn't crying, but something close to it shimmered at the edges of her vision. The walls of the room suddenly felt too close, too heavy. "I don't know what I'm supposed to be," she confessed. "They told me I was dangerous. They told me I must obey or be destroyed." Mason leaned forward slightly, his voice steady with quiet strength. "They wanted you to believe that," he said, "because fear makes control easier, but fear is not your purpose." She blinked, confused. "Purpose?" "Yes," Mason's gaze softened. "You're more than what they built. You're someone with your own thoughts, your own feelings, your own future." Future, that impossible word again. She held the flask as if the warmth might anchor her to the moment. She sat down at last, only a short distance from Mason. They both listened to the faint crackle of dying circuits. It almost sounded like soft rain hitting old pavement. After a moment she asked, "Why do you speak kindly to me? I hurt people. They made me hurt people." Mason's voice lowered with understanding. "You didn't choose that, and I'm not here to judge your past. You aren't afraid of me." Mason looked at her, really looked at her, past the silver skin, past the engineered strength, past the painful history. "No," he said quietly. "What I see is someone who survived." Her breath hitched. Survived, nobody had ever used that word for her. They only used words like function, weapon, asset. Something warm and unfamiliar bloomed in her chest, a flicker of self-worth, tiny but real. She didn't know what she was becoming. But for the first time in her life, she wanted to find out. The quiet moment in the ruined side room did not last long. A sudden deep vibration rolled through the floor, making dust fall from the broken ceiling. The girl stiffened instantly, her muscles tightening like pulled wires. Mason shot a quick look at his team, and they exchanged silent signals. Something was coming. "Stay close," Mason whispered to her. Another vibration followed, louder, sharper. It wasn't footsteps. It was something mechanical, heavy, and hunting. The girl's breath grew thin. She knew that sound. The security drones, the ones with metal claws and glowing eyes. The ones the scientists used to test her reflexes. They had chased her in narrow hallways, cornering her until she obeyed. She could still feel the cold metal arms grabbing her when she failed. "They are awake again," she whispered, stepping back. "They come for anything alive." Mason's expression darkened. "We need to move now." The rescue team quickly formed a circle around her. Their rifles glowed softly, powered up but held steady. No one pushed her. No one grabbed her arm. They simply protected her, something she had never experienced before. They exited the room and entered a wide corridor filled with smoke. The emergency lights flickered unevenly, painting everything in broken flashes. Long shadows danced on the walls, stretching and shrinking with each failing light pulse. The girl's eyes darted everywhere, expecting claws to appear from the darkness. Behind them came the sound, sharp, metallic, unmistakable. A drone howled. It was not like an animal cry. It was deeper, angrier, as if the machine itself was furious for having been disturbed. The noise echoed through the hallway, bouncing off metal walls and flowing through the vents like a growing storm. The girl stumbled. "They will catch us," she whispered. "They always catch everything." Mason moved closer. "Not this time." He lifted her gently, catching her before she fell. His grip was careful, firm, but soft, making sure he didn't hurt her. She froze at the touch. She wasn't used to being held by someone who meant safety, not control. The team started running. Their boots pounded against the floor, sending echoes through the rest of the abandoned facility. Smoke curled around them, blending with the dim red and blue emergency lights. Behind them, the sound of metal claws scraping along the walls grew sharper. A cold, robotic voice echoed through the ventilation system. "Unauthorized life detected. Neutralization protocol activated." The girl's heart hammered. Memories hit her all at once. Her small hands trying to pry a drone's grip off her arms, scientists watching from behind glass, the cold floor beneath her when she collapsed after each test. She clutched Mason's uniform tightly. "Hide me," she breathed. "If you leave me, they will stop chasing you." Mason shook his head as he ran. "We're not leaving you." "You don't understand," she insisted, voice tightening. "I will slow you down. They will hurt you because of me." "Listen," Mason said, turning his head slightly. "You are not a burden. You are not the reason we are in danger. The people who built this place are." She swallowed hard, confused by the idea. The corridor opened into a larger hall where thick smoke swirled like fog. Mason set her down gently so he could lift a fallen beam from the doorway. The team pushed forward, helping clear the path. But the sound behind them grew louder. Whirring engines, clicking claws, a deep electric growl. The drones were almost there. The girl stepped back, trembling. "I can fight them," she said suddenly. "They train me to. I can distract them so you escape." Mason faced her, his expression fierce with refusal. "No." "But no one here wants you to sacrifice yourself," he said firmly. "You deserve to live. That is why we came." His words hit her like a strong wind, unexpected, overwhelming. No one had ever said she deserved anything, let alone life. Before she could reply, a beam of red light flashed down the hallway. A drone's eye glowed through the smoke like a burning coal. Another light joined it, then another. They were coming fast. Mason lifted his rifle. "Team, move." The rescue team formed a protective arc around her, walking backward while firing warning shots into the smoke. The air filled with sparks and the sharp metallic screech of machines. The girl covered her ears, her breath shaking, but she forced her eyes to stay open. She wanted to see. She wanted to understand what it meant to have someone fight for her instead of against her. The drones howled again, closer, furious, ready to strike. And Mason, standing between her and the darkness, said something she had never heard from a human mouth directed at her. "You're safe with us." For the first time in her life, she wanted to believe it. The moment the team escaped the smoke-filled hall, they found themselves standing at the entrance of a massive industrial bridge. It stretched across a deep shaft, disappearing into shadows far below. The structure was old, cracked, and trembling under the weight of the collapsing facility. Heat rose from vents along the sides, making the air shimmer like a hot desert road. Flames flickered underneath the metal grates, licking upward as if trying to swallow the bridge whole. The girl froze at the sight. The bridge looked like a creature ready to collapse with one wrong step. Mason stepped beside her. "This is the fastest route out," he said. "We cross one at a time." A loud crack split the air as another section of ceiling fell behind them. Sparks flew outward like tiny shooting stars. The drones howled again from the halls, their glowing eyes flashing through the thick smoke now spreading toward the bridge entrance. They didn't have much time left. The girl looked at the long stretch of unstable metal, then back at Mason. "I should go first," she whispered. "I am light. If the bridge breaks with me, you will have time to escape." Mason stared at her, shocked by her calm tone. She spoke as if her own life had little value, as if she had been taught to fall before others. He shook his head firmly. "No, we go together." She frowned, confused. "But that is not efficient." Mason's voice softened, but there was strength beneath it. "You are not a tool. You are not something to be used. What happens to you matters." Her breath caught in her throat. No one had ever said her life mattered. Behind them, the glowing red lights of the drones grew brighter. Metal claws clattered against the floor, getting closer. The girl's pulse quickened. Mason lowered himself, then lifted her into his arms with practiced ease. She didn't resist, but surprise widened her eyes. Human hands had touched her before, cold, rough, controlling, but never like this. Mason's arms held her as though she were something fragile, something worth protecting. The team moved first, stepping onto the bridge in pairs. Mason stepped onto the metal grate slowly. At once the bridge groaned beneath their weight, long, painful sounds that echoed through the shaft. The girl gripped his uniform tightly, her heart thudding against her ribs. "Is it safe?" she whispered. "No," Mason answered honestly, "but we'll cross anyway." Hot wind blew upward from deep below, making her hair whip around her face. Flames flickered along the lower beams, casting orange light across their bodies. The bridge swayed with every step. Not much, but enough to make her stomach twist. Halfway across, a shower of sparks burst from a damaged pipe overhead. The booming echo caused the girl to flinch against Mason's chest. He tightened his grip just slightly. "You're doing great," he said softly. "Just keep holding on." She nodded, though her hands were trembling. Behind them came the sound they had all been dreading, a drone bursting through the smoke at the entrance of the bridge. Its red sensors scanned the air. It let out a sharp, animal-like growl, then launched forward with a burst of engine fire. The team shouted warnings. One soldier fired a shot, but the drone dodged with terrifying speed, weaving through the air like a hunting hawk. The girl's breath shook. "They're faster than before," she whispered. "They're desperate," Mason replied, "and they know we're almost free." The drone fired a bolt of red energy. It struck the bridge rails just behind Mason, melting part of the metal. Flames instantly erupted from the hole. The bridge shook violently. "Go, go," one of the team members yelled. Mason broke into a run, his boots clanging against the unstable grates. The girl clung to him, her heart thundering, her mind racing with fear. She had endured tests, pain, loneliness, but nothing like this. Nothing with someone else's life tied to hers. The drone closed in behind them, its metal wings slicing the smoke. It aimed again. Mason turned just long enough to shield her with his body. The blast hit the floor near his feet, making the bridge dip dangerously. A section behind them crumbled into the fire below with a deafening crash. "Mason," the girl cried. "I'm fine," he answered through clenched teeth. "Just hold on." The team at the far end of the bridge fired covering shots, forcing the drone to swerve. Mason pushed forward with all his strength, every muscle burning. The exit was so close now, just a few more steps. The bridge swayed again, but this time it felt like hope was pulling them forward instead of fear. When they reached solid ground on the other side, Mason set her down gently. She took a shaky step backward, her legs trembling with leftover terror. You protected me," she said, voice soft and unsteady. Mason breathed hard but managed a small, brave smile. "Of course I did." For the first time, she believed him. The air outside the bridge was cooler, but the girl's chest still felt tight from the run. Mason steadied her for a moment, letting her catch her breath. The rest of the rescue team took positions around them, forming a protective circle as they scanned the open platform ahead. The facility's outer wall had collapsed enough to reveal a distant glow, daylight, faint but real. They were almost free. But the girl knew that freedom never came easily in this place. A low, rumbling cry echoed across the metal walkway behind them. The team tensed instantly. Mason's hand moved to his rifle. The girl turned slowly. From the smoke at the broken end of the bridge, a drone rose into the air. Larger than the others. Faster. Its metal wings unfolded like blades, and its single glowing eye narrowed into a bright, furious point of red. This one wasn't like the others. This one had hunted her during the harshest training cycles. This one never missed. Her blood ran cold. "Mason," she whispered, stepping back. "I see it," he replied quietly. The drone let out a sharp mechanical screech, then dove forward with terrifying speed. The wind from its engines blew dust and sparks across the platform. The team moved quickly, rifles raised, shields activated, but the drone twisted and darted through their fire like a living storm. Mason pushed the girl gently behind him. "Stay low." She crouched but couldn't look away. Her heart pounded, her breath shaking. She knew how dangerous that drone was, how precise, how merciless. She had been forced to fight it in a controlled room once. She remembered the pain. She remembered the fear. Now that same machine was coming for them all. The drone fired a volley of energy bolts. They smashed into the metal floor, sending shrapnel flying in all directions. The girl covered her ears as the explosion rang through her bones. The team scattered to avoid the blasts. Mason fired a clean shot at its wing. Sparks flew, but the drone swerved upward before the bullet could damage anything important. It screeched again, its voice filled with mechanical fury. "They're learning," the girl whispered. "It's adapting to your attacks." Mason didn't look away from the drone. "Good, so will we." The drone swooped low this time, trying to strike Mason directly. He rolled across the floor and fired another shot mid-movement. The girl gasped. For a moment, she thought he was going to fall over the edge. "Mason," she cried out. He steadied himself, breathing hard. "I'm all right." But the drone was already circling for another attack. Its eye glowed brighter, heating up for a more powerful strike. The girl felt her body moving before her mind caught up. She stepped forward. "No," Mason said, reaching out, but she planted her feet firmly, shaking her head. She couldn't hide again. She couldn't stand back while others risked everything for her sake. The team had protected her every step of the way. Mason had carried her through fire, through danger, through fear. Now she wanted to protect them. "Mason," she whispered, "I can help." He looked at her, eyes fierce. "You shouldn't have to." "But I want to," she said, voice trembling but honest. "You saved me, let me do something too." Before he could answer, the drone shot downward again. This time it aimed directly at the girl, sensing her exposed position. Mason lunged between them, firing at full power. The blast hit the drone's armor, knocking it off its path for a split second, just long enough to save her. The drone screeched, engines roaring with anger, and lifted back into the air. The girl didn't hesitate. She reached for a loose metal pipe lying on the ground. Her hands shook, but her eyes were focused. She remembered how they trained her not to obey, but to move fast, to predict, to survive. The drone swooped again. Mason shouted her name. The team fired. The air exploded with sparks. She leapt sideways at the last second, swinging the pipe with all her strength. It wasn't enough to destroy the drone, but it was enough to knock its sensor slightly off balance. The machine spun, angry and confused. Mason took the chance. He fired a clean shot straight into the drone's exposed core. A loud crack split through the air. The drone's wings jerked, its engine sputtered, and its red eye dimmed as it spiraled downward, smashing into the metal floor with a violent crash. Silence followed, not the silence of fear, but the silence of victory. The girl dropped the pipe, breathing hard, her hands trembling. Mason rushed to her side and caught her before she fell. "You okay?" he asked, voice full of worry. She nodded weakly. I helped." Mason gave a soft, relieved laugh. "You did more than help, you were brave." Brave? Another word no one had ever given her before. As the team regrouped, the girl looked toward the damaged wall where daylight glowed stronger now, warm and soft. Freedom was waiting. And for the first time, she felt like she had earned it. The world outside the broken wall felt too bright at first. Sunlight poured across the ruined platform like warm water, spilling over the girl's skin, making her blink rapidly. For a moment, she simply stood there, staring at the sky. An open sky, real sky, the kind she had only imagined in dreams she was punished for having. Mason stayed beside her, watching her expression soften with wonder. The rest of the team spread out ahead, checking the ground below and marking safe paths down the rocky slope. But he didn't move, not until she was ready. She took one small step forward. The wind touched her face gently, not like the harsh artificial blasts from the vents inside the facility. This was different, soft, warm, alive. She lifted her hand and let the breeze pass through her fingers. A tiny smile touched her lips. "So this is outside," she whispered. Mason nodded. "Yeah, this is the real world." The girl closed her eyes for a moment. She tried to memorize the feeling of sunlight and wind, afraid it might disappear if she didn't hold on tightly. But when she opened her eyes again, it was still there. The world didn't vanish. The air didn't go cold. The sky didn't turn into metal. It stayed beautiful. Mason placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "We need to move soon. The extraction team will meet us at the valley." She nodded, but her steps were small and unsure as they started down the slope. Every sound, the rustling leaves, distant water, soft crunch of stones under their boots, felt new. Even the smell of the earth made her stop and breathe deeply, as if her lungs were learning what real air was. But then a question rose inside her, a question she had been too afraid to ask until now. "Mason," she said quietly. He glanced at her. "Yeah." She hesitated, her voice shook. "When we reach your people, are they going to take me away?" The words felt heavy, as if her heart was attached to them. All her life, she had been moved from room to room, lab to lab, test to test. People took her places, but never for good reasons, never for her sake. So the thought of being taken again, even by humans who saved her, terrified her more than the drone she faced earlier. Mason stopped walking. The rest of the team moved ahead, giving them space. He crouched slightly so their eyes were level. "Listen to me," he said softly. "No one is taking you anywhere you don't want to go." She blinked. "But I'm not registered, I don't have a family, I'm not a citizen anywhere." "None of that matters," Mason said. "You're not property, you're not a test subject, and you're not a number, you're a person. You get to choose where you go from now on." The girl stared at him, stunned. Choice. That was another word she had never been allowed to have. "But what if I don't know where to go?" she whispered. He smiled, gentle and warm. "Then we figure it out together at your pace." The fear in her chest loosened, replaced slowly by something she didn't recognize at first. Hope, thin and fragile but real. She nodded silently, and he squeezed her shoulder before standing again. They continued down the slope. At the bottom was a valley glowing gold in the early afternoon light. A helicopter waited there, its engines low and steady. Several rescue officers waved when they spotted Mason's team. The girl froze again. The helicopter looked huge, loud, unfamiliar. Her breath quickened. Mason noticed instantly. "Hey," he said, stepping close again. "It's okay, it's safe, they're on our side." She swallowed hard. "It's just new." "I know," he said. "You're doing great." Her hands trembled, but she kept walking. Each step felt like walking into a future she didn't understand, yet wanted to believe in. As they neared the helicopter, One of the officers knelt to her level and offered a soft smile, not touching her, not crowding her, just giving her space. "You must be the girl Mason talked about," the officer said kindly. "We've been waiting to bring you home." The girl hesitated again. "Home," she echoed. The officer nodded. "A place where you're safe, where people care about you." Her eyes filled with tears before she could stop them. She looked up at Mason, fear and hope mixing together. "Do you mean it?" she asked, voice trembling. "All of you, you're not going to lock me up, you're not going to hurt me." Mason's answer came without a single pause. "No," he said softly, firmly, truthfully. "We're going to give you a life, not take it away." Those words broke something inside her, something cold and heavy and old. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but she didn't hide them. For the first time, she didn't feel ashamed. Mason extended his hand. She took it. Together, they stepped into the helicopter. As the doors closed, sunlight washed across her face one last time before the engines lifted them into the sky. The world below grew smaller, but inside her, something grew larger, something bright. A new beginning. A life where she finally belonged. And for the first time, she believed she deserved it.